Wholesale, this is Rob Short, Wholesaler Masterminds, and you may be thinking to yourself, Rob, you're thinking, what do you have besides this amazing podcast? And I'm so glad you asked. Wholesaler Masterminds has an assortment of product and services all designed around the art, science, and lifestyle of wholesaling. As an example, we have coaching services designed to help you power wash your practice, whether you have 2 years or 22 years. We'll offer you speaking live engagements at divisional or national sales meetings. Our scheduling service has dedicated professionals trained in the art of getting you more appointments, Wholesaler Mastermind schedulers. Our speakers bureau brings you amazing speakers and processes to get better return on investment out of those speakers. And finally, our partnership, our newest partnership with Allego. If you have Allego and want to get the Wholesaler Masterminds channel on your Allego platform, please let us know. Wholesaler Masterminds, happy to bring you this podcast and so much more. Wholesaler Masterminds, the art, science, and lifestyle of wholesaling. Wholesalers, I don't know if you recall, about 2-3 years ago, we did the Millionaire Wholesaler study. We wanted to find out, when it came to the best of the best in our business, what was it that made them the best of the best? What attributes did they have? How could we learn from them? So when our guest today told me that he had a new book coming out, which was not necessarily speaking about wholesaling, but speaking about sales professionals, which we are, and he had some insights into what made the best of the best due to his work that he has done in this arena, well, of course, I wanted to know more, and so should you. Welcome to the only podcast on the planet dedicated to exploring the art, science, and lifestyle of wholesalers and their leaders. This is the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show. I'm your host, the founder of Wholesaler Masterminds, Rob Shore. Wholesalers, welcome back to the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show. Our guest today has a brand new book out. It's called 21 Secrets of $1 Million Sellers. Now, for over 30 years, Steve Harvill has helped successful sales teams do what they do better, smarter, more elegantly, and more imaginatively. As a consultant for some of the top companies in the world, including Apple, Pepsi, Samsung, Wells Fargo, he aids in simplifying processes that have become unwieldy and make teams more effective. His work inspired him to ask the question, what exactly sets top producers apart from their peers? And after spending a full year, interviewing 175 sales superstars from 7 different industries, he found 21 distinct behaviors of successful salespeople. We're going to start to pick that apart today. Steve Harvill, welcome to the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show.
Thanks for having me, Rob. It's an honor to be here.
Delighted to have you. Let's not waste even a moment. Tell us, first, let's set up the 7 different industries. I don't know if you have them committed to memory off the top of your head, but can you give our listeners an idea of the range of industry we're talking about?
Sure. We had a strong element in financial services and insurance. We had advertising. We had medical equipment sales, pharmaceuticals, real estate, and automotive.
Awesome. So just by the sound of that, we know that while wholesalers may not have been part of the study set, these are producers that are meeting with end clients, either B2B or B2C, and they are engaging in commission-related activities. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, and we did have wholesalers involved in it. We had wholesalers in financial service and wholesalers in the insurance field.
Awesome. Better still. Did not know that. Makes it even more relevant. Thank you for telling me that. All right. So let's talk about some of the chapters of the book. So Wholesalers, the book is laid out in 3 component pieces, 4 essential secrets, client relationship secrets, and work performance secrets. And you know we run about 20 minutes on this show, so it'll be enough to whet your taste buds to go buy the book.
Hopefully.
As we talk through some of these. So essential secret number 3 intrigues me, Steve. Tell a good tale. What's that all about?
Well, the power of story, which has driven our ability to connect to an idea for about 40,000 years, probably even longer than that. That dates back to the first cave drawings. Has been around a really long time, and those great producers in any of these fields were unbelievably good storytellers. They recognized it as a skill. They worked on it. They understood the component elements of a story, a beginning, a middle, and an end. They crafted stories well, often based on elements that their company had provided them, maybe with a little shift to their own special perspective. So they had that crafting element, and they married it to the telling element. Those are the two key aspects of story, crafting and telling. And they used it to create long-term immediate relationship connections.
And when you say that they kind of refined, I'm extrapolating from what you said, they refine their skills in storytelling. So we've had experts on the podcast, and wholesalers, if you haven't listened to the experts we've had talk about specifically story selling, go back and find those episodes. What were some of the benefits that they saw? In other words, once they perfected their craft, what were some of the benefits they saw from telling stories? And I guess related to that, how did they weave it into the sales process that you saw?
Well, in fact, I would think it's absolutely fundamental to their sales process. And what they did was they used story to create connections. If you have a complex, let's say you're selling robotic surgery equipment. You're selling it to hospitals. They're familiar with it, but it's a complex setup and a long-term sale process for it. They'll weave stories about successes, story about time saving. They'll weave story about the inventive process behind that element into what they do. If you're wholesaling, you're weaving and especially in financial services or the insurance side, you're weaving your product into the perceived needs of the client. And the best tool, the most powerful tool you can use is story. And you should be working on it as a fundamental skill set consistently, constantly, in fact.
While we're here, because it sounds like you have a great deal of knowledge around this, I want to pick your brain. What's something that we do or that these $1 million sellers did to exercise that muscle? I mean, how did they build that skill?
Well, it's interesting. Many of them that have it as a recognizable element study it from a wide variety of perspectives, right? And I'll give you one of the most interesting ones that I talk to people about is how great comedians build, jokes. Yep. And there's a series that Jerry Seinfeld does called Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee on the internet.
Great series.
And they'll watch that show because every single time the comedians tell how they built the jokes that work for them. What was the construction process? What was the testing process? And so they'll look at elements like that. If they're weaker, they'll find opportunities outside of the scale and scope of their business to work and refine their storytelling. One of the automobile sales professionals that sold high-end luxury cars, early on when he was building his skill set, would go to the local library and volunteer for Children's Story Hour. And he would sit there with 25 second graders sitting in Indian style, hanging on every word until he learned how to make a connection from that. That was a brilliant methodology of practicing
I love that
skill
one.
sets.
That's awesome. Yeah, sometimes wholesalers, I don't know if you take for granted, sometimes I take for granted the sheer brilliance of comedians. I mean, to know that a Jerry Seinfeld or a Chris Rock or even Ellen DeGeneres was talking about it recently, she's going to be coming back and doing stand-up. And the fact of the matter is, she'll be going out at 11 o'clock midnight in clubs in LA and just showing up and doing a quick 15 minutes and checking the boxes on how things are phrased and just making sure that every word lands as it's supposed to. It's a lot of freaking work.
It is. It's prototyping, though, right? If you're designing a new bicycle, you build models of that bicycle as you're testing the best features of it. It's no different than that. It's prototyping around your story content.
Let's jump to the next one. Make friends first. I'm anxious to hear what this is about because I got my neck hairs up. I'm ready to disagree with it. Tell me what make friends first is.
Make friends first deals primarily with the fact that in relationship selling, you would find that almost all of these producers that have long-term relationships with their clients are also friends with their clients. They do things with their clients. They exchange ideas with their clients. They talk about the best book that they read. What movie did they see recently? When they're around each other, they'll go to dinner in a non-business setting. They'll be invited to client appreciation events in which they connect with them, which is why companies do client appreciation events, is to build that sense of friendship around the relationship. And a lot of times what a lower level sales professional will do. They'll jump into the product, the service, the element so rapidly that they lack that connective element of what the relationship will be. And that's kind of what that chapter's about.
Can we kind of poke that around for a second?
As much as you want to poke away.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I don't disagree. So please don't get me wrong. But
that's okay.
I am.
These are actually, everything in the book is elements of pattern recognition from the study we did. So.
Yeah.
I'm not a professional salesperson.
No, but what I want to get your thoughts on, because you've been a respected consultant for 30 years, I want to get your thoughts on this. There is a difference between building relationships and making friends. Would you agree with that?
I would say that in the friendship side, there's at the core of a friendship is a relationship. So I would say there are elements that are commonly shared by both.
I would certainly agree with that. In my brain, I think about and conducted what was a pretty successful practice around the notion that you can develop really solid relationships, but it doesn't mean I have them to the house for dinner.
Oh, I would say that that's probably true. And I would certainly not say that every single relationship that results in a transaction, a sale, a long-term element is somebody that you'd go have a beer with. But I'm saying that a lot of them are.
Yeah. And believe me, we have listeners right now that do an extraordinary job of making that. The story that I tell from the platform is always the same. There was a wholesaler I used to work with at one of my old firms, and she had an annual Halloween party. She had 400 clients to her house every Halloween. I mean, that is at the cutting edge of making friends with clients.
No doubt about it. And it describes perfectly one of the real estate professionals in the book that does a series of 4 parties a year for her clients, her prospective clients, that are attended by. Every single time there's 50 to 100 people. We just came back from the big wine tasting one last Friday night, in which there were 50 to 100 people at this event that were all business, either people she has sold homes to or is getting ready to sell homes to. There wasn't a stitch of business spoke at the entire event.
Yeah. Because there's another nuance there, right? So, and this is just the way I'm processing it. Of course, there's the relationship versus friends piece, and then there's also the nuance of how you, conduct yourself when you're in that, should we say, based upon the way that you've titled the chapter, in the friend zone, right?
Sure, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
And these guys are experts at that, by the way.
They're experts at finding the right line between business, pleasure, a meal that is, because, I get asked that question as a coach sometimes from newer wholesalers especially. They're like, well, Rob, how much time at dinner should be spent talking about business? And
that's a good question.
It is, and the answer is always, it depends.
Yeah, and that's a good answer, by the way. The element of flexibility, of how malleable something is in a situation like that, is what separates a professional from somebody who's just like growing their practice or who is just getting started, right? That professional knows what that balance is. The person that's growing in the practice needs a number of those kinds of meals to figure out where that is.
Yeah.
It's not muscle memory. You can play a 3-bar element on the guitar over and over again, and you can play it by memory. Sales isn't like that.
No, you can play a 3-bar element.
I can, about 100 different 3-bar elements.
Let's move to number 3 in our discussion today. And always being the sucker for an acronym, I had to jump on this one.
Mm-hmm.
WAIT, wait.
Wait is, why am I talking? Great producers are expert active listeners, and it's a hard skill set for them to get their heads around and arms around to make it successful. The reason being is that salespeople are immediately pitching product, service, connection, all of those elements. And when they're doing this, they're creating this stream of vocal data that's heading towards their client. The separation element, the differentiation piece of this for the great producer is the fact that they know how to listen.
Let me put you on the spot for a second. Because you're stating something which is 100% true. It is irrefutable And it's talked about so much as to become white noise. Here's my question for you. Give me a trick. Give me a hint. Here, I'll share.
Sure.
I'll share one with you. Okay.
I'll give you a hint. There's a startling connection that the brain makes to what it hears when it's written down by hand.
Okay.
By a connection between pen or pencil and paper. When that's done in an environment where you're actively listening, you'll pick up, you'll capture, you'll focus. The brain loves that element of the connection when it comes to note-taking. And so if you want to be an expert listener or become an expert listener, learn to become a really good note-taker. And in that context, if you can learn to be a sketch noter in which you use images instead of words, you'll double the effectiveness of your listening along lines like that. So there's one.
No, and I'll share one with you. So this is a suggestion that I had heard and passed along to one of my coaching clients. And it follows the same path, which is the principle that I hear you speaking about, and I'm sure that there's a fancy scientific term for it, but the thought that I hear you suggesting is that we're kind of occupying other senses besides just the sense of listening. So we're having to engage the eyes to see what we're writing, and we have to engage the muscle to be able to write, and it occupies more stuff that would otherwise distract us. Again, not scientific, but I'm guessing that's part of the answer. So I had a discussion with one of my clients. I said, one of the things I heard and I've used myself is if you're really trying to listen, intently listen, you're on the guest chair side of the desk. Try to read lips. Because if you're trying to read lips while you're listening, it gets harder to be distracted. So he goes into...
I love that idea.
So he goes into an advisor's office, and it was somebody he knew. It was at Morgan Stanley. And I don't know if you're listening, client, but remember this story. He goes into the client's office, and he's listening hard. He's listening real hard. He's reading lips. And the advisor looks back at him and says, "You reading my lips?"
Well observed.
And the wholesaler said, to his credit, 25-year experience wholesaler, talking about, we talked about the meal and how to know what's right to say in the meal and when to say it. What do you do when you get busted? Well, you cop to it. He said, as a matter of fact, I am, because I'm trying to get better at listening. You might want to try it. Right?
I think that's a great idea. I think there's also probably a fine line between the level of staring at someone that gives them that Charles Manson kind of feeling about you, right? Versus that element. But you're right about one thing is that there are multiple senses that are being engaged. The visual sense is engaged 87% of the time, and that audio sense is only 7.5% of the time. So the ability to somehow connect visual to the audio, whether it's lip reading or whether it's taking notes, builds a gigantic bridge into that huge gap between how the senses work.
Yes. We could spend the next 20 minutes talking about listening, but let's keep going. Because this one's important. And charm the gatekeepers. I was about to go off on a diatribe. No, I want you to tell us what charm the gatekeepers.
I think as you're entering sales, the gatekeeper becomes this level of frustration that you have a tendency to think of them as an enemy.
True.
Or to think of them as guarding something that's so precious to you that you'd really like to just stomp over them to get to where you want to go. But as we talked to a lot of these producers that were in the study, they instead had embraced the gatekeeper. And my favorite story from that chapter is the guy who, as he was answering this question, looked at me and said, "Steve, pizza's only $50." And I go, "What?" And he goes, "Pizza's only $50. For $50, I can feed the entire support staff for one of my clients." Mm-hmm. And he says, "And I do it a different client every week of the year, practically, on the $50 element." And he said he went to a local pizza guy, said, "Listen, you're not selling any pizzas at lunch, are you?" And the guy said, "Nah, pizza's pretty much a dinner dish." He goes, "I'll tell you what, I'll buy pizzas from you once a week, but not at the price you've got up there at this price, and I'll let you put a coupon in the box to introduce your pizza to the clients, and I'll do that all the time." And he said, "It's jokingly, I'm the pizza guy for a lot of these people because I make sure I'm there when it's delivered. Mm-hmm. But when I need to get through to somebody, the pizza guy gets through."
It is always frustrating to me, and it is evidence of what you just spoke about, right? What newer sales professionals do. Or you could say impatient sales professionals do, even if they're tenured.
Yep.
Or what about when sales professionals get a little too full of themselves? Because
there were a few of those in the study,
right? But that is another perhaps reason, not a valid reason, mind you, for why people want to run roughshod over gatekeepers and administrative professionals, and doesn't it just drive you nuts when folks don't see the gold that's sitting in front of them if they just treated them properly?
Yeah, with a little respect and a little gratitude, it's amazing what happens. The handwritten note, for us and all the administrative staff that we deal with, we do chocolate-covered strawberries all the time. And there's that element of simple respect and gratitude, and it's recognized. It's as recognized as the signal turning red at a stoplight. It's something that doesn't take a lot, and it's unbelievably powerful.
What's this embrace your dark side? Excuse me, embrace the dark side.
That's about the area that most sales professionals spend all their time in, right? They're in the 1,000 no's to one yes area. Mm-hmm. And if you allow the 1,000 no's to devastate you, you're not long for the world of sales of any kind. And so a lot of these professionals understand that aspect of no through the journey of a relationship in sales. And so my favorite story from this one was I walked into a guy's office, and he had taken one of the walls in his office and cork boarded it. And on it were a multitude of colored 3x5 cards. And I looked at it and I asked him, what's that? And he goes, oh, that's the wall. And I go, what's the wall? And he goes, come here a minute. And we went around the desk, and he said, this is just about every objection and negative thing that has come my way since I've been in sales.
He'd written them down.
And he'd written them you could not believe how many cards were on the wall. And he said, and before I go out on a sales call, before I start a new relationship, before I start prospecting for something like this, I sit down and I look at the wall. And he said, and it reminds me of, here's how you get around that. Here's what that no was. And right when we're talking during the interview, a guy opens the door to his office, sticks his head in and says, hey, can I look at the wall? And he said, no, I got somebody in the office right now, but when we're done, you're welcome to. And I turned to him, I said, do people come in here? He said, all the time.
I love that.
And that was, to me, as embracing the dark side, as Anakin Skywalker did to become Darth Vader, right? It's like putting your arms around it and saying, this is it, and I'm going to display it to learn from it. And I guess that's the key, is that aspect of learning from it.
Yeah, this job of wholesaling, I think, in my opinion, having sold other stuff in my career, this job, I think that the no's are lighter, if you will.
I agree.
Yeah, they don't smack you upside the head in the same way that, perhaps a no selling cars or God forbid door-to-door no's or whatever the case may be.
Or even pharmaceuticals too.
Yeah.
One of the ideas that we wanted was we wanted a wide range of industries, right?
Well, I love that you did that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that in wholesaling on certain aspects, it's not as hard, but they're also selling to technically another business, right? Or the FA or the retirement consultant or whatever element that they're selling to along lines like that is also highly professional in the field that they're trying to sell to.
Oh, it requires its own unique, brilliant skill set. It's just different in terms of the velocity of the no.
Yeah, you're right.
It's not no, go F yourself.
Yes, which, by the way, some of these get.
Exactly. When you told me the range of sales professional across industry, that's why I brought it up. All right.
The automotive gets that.
Yes. Let's go to the last one, which is for us today. Don't waste good.
Yeah. If you spend your time in no, when you get that unbelievable yes, you shouldn't waste it. You should take it apart like it was a puzzle that you were trying to figure out. You should look at each aspect of what led to the yes, so that you never waste it and you build upon it. You leverage it. It becomes strategic to you. So a story from the book on this is a woman who was a squazillion-dollar producer in the insurance industry. She had 2 multi-million-dollar producers that worked on her team, so it was actually her book of business and 2 other people with support staff. And after every single sale, and I mean, this is like clockwork, she'll call people, the teams into the conference room, she'll sit them down, she'll say, what went right? I want to know every single thing that went right that resulted in this sale, if she was not directly involved in it, and even if she was, she'd share it with the team. She wants to know why it went right, not just what went right, why did that work? And lastly, she asks the third question is, what can we do better? Those are the only 3 questions she ever asks. And she builds all of her strategies around the answers to those 3 questions. She also has what I considered the single most obnoxious element that I ran into almost in the whole thing. She has outside of her door a gigantic brass captain's bell, or like a boat bell. And when I mean big, it looks like it came off the Titanic. It's huge. And after every successful sale, either she or her team member that did it or a support person gets to ring it twice. And it drives everybody in their office crazy. It's so loud that it not only, I'm sure the people on the floor below and above can hear it in the office, and it's just, it's a celebration, but it's also letting everybody know in the pecking order who's made that sale. And it's quite an honor if you're on her team to get to ring the bell, by the way.
Wholesalers,
I didn't get to do it.
That's awesome. I want to end today, Wholesalers, with where I started. So, and pivot off of what Steve just said. So, where I started the conversation was around the study that we did about millionaire wholesalers. And one of the quotes that we got from Millionaire Wholesaler, and I'll paraphrase since I don't have it sitting in front of me, but essentially it was, you need time to reflect. And he was the only wholesaler that I interviewed that even came close to saying anything about self-reflection or business reflection. So of the many things that we talked about, which were all wonderful, this one hits very close to home to me, because what I like to say is we're in the next business. What's the next appointment I have to make? What's the next piece of literature I have to order? What's the next boarding pass I have to download? What's the next email I have to send? Next. And we don't take any time to reflect. And reflection can be good.
Absolutely.
Steve Harvill, the book is entitled 21 Secrets of the $1 Million Seller. Congratulations on it, and thank you for joining us.
Oh, I'm honored. Every Sunday night I wait for my Rob Shore note.
You are very kind to say that. Wholesalers, come back next time for another episode of the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show. You'll find all of our content at wholesalermasterminds.com, and the podcast can be found at iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play.